Hello and welcome back to the Meraki Unboxed podcast. My name is Sammy Brenner. I'm coming back refreshed from some PTO and I'm so excited to host today's episode. We have an outstanding guest and it's going to be a really, really fun one. I know it. If you haven't already done so, go ahead and subscribe. Make sure you're telling everyone you know about how amazing this podcast is. We have new content coming out about every 2 weeks. And as always, if you'd like to collaborate with us or you have ideas, please tweet us at Meraki Simon. And if it makes sense, we'd love to collaborate, have you on the podcast. But without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and jump in and introduce today's guest. So Hope Galley joined Cisco Meraki to lead our global channel org almost a year ago. Prior to her time at Meraki, Hope was actually at Cisco, where she built a 22-year career, starting out as a channel account manager and then holding various roles throughout her tenure. She worked as a regional manager at one point, a global AM, a sales director of services and software, and then ended up being an executive leader of Software and Services Americas AOP. So she has had many roles within the Cisco world and organization through channel and sales. Hope says that she is obsessed with customer obsession. She says when your customers are enamored with your product or service and the customer experience is so good that they can't help but come back for more, that is when you've built customer obsession and a life cycle loyalty that's hard to shake. And she says, that's what I do at Cisco. So I love it. I love that mantra. I want to dig into that a little bit more. Besides being a total hustler and a go-getter in her career, she's also a mom of 3. I don't know how you do it all. Welcome to the Meraki Unboxed podcast, Hope. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Sammy? It's good to be here. I just got back from PTO too. So,
I know.
The two of us are going to crush this before we get to our 5,000 emails. I love that.
Exactly. Digging our way out of the email hole. Well, I am so excited you're here. And just a little bit of background for listeners who are tuning in today. I met Hope a couple weeks ago. She was out at Meraki HQ and we were out at a little, happy hour gathering and she was sitting across the table from me and we just started chatting. It was my first time meeting her and immediately Hope, your vibe, your energy, the way you talked about your team and the business and transformation. I was just so blown away by you that I was like, hey, you have to come on this podcast. I'm not really giving you an option. So thank you for saying yes.
Of course. I'm excited to be here. It was great to be out at the HQ. It was my first trip. So that was amazing to see everyone, spend time with everybody, and definitely great energy out there in the Bay with the team.
Yeah.
So
really enjoyed it. It absolutely is. So let's dig in and start from the beginning. I always like to ask this question. So tell us your story. I mean, how did you even get into technology in the first place?
By luck. You know how that, how you fall into things. You always hear that. People always say I fell into XYZ. I needed a job when I went to college, and the job board had the computer center. At the time had an opening for somebody to sit at the front desk and kind of just take tickets and move things around and kind of be a jack of all trades. And so I went down there and I applied, and little did I know that random ticket on a job board in college would lead to me having a career in technology. So that's how it all started. Just one of those fluke kind of things that I was a marketing and major as well as MIS at the time, Management Information Systems. And it just kind of fit into what I wanted to do. And I made some great friends there. And that kind of kicked off me in technology. So
wow,
that's where it all began.
Yeah. Yeah. And so how did that lead you to Cisco, that original job?
Well, it's interesting. I got a job at a job fair right out my junior year in college, and it was with a tech company who worked in the automobile industry, and that moved me to DC. And when I was here in DC, I got involved with some other tech companies that were out here starting up and so forth. And I actually, a funny story, I had sold a large installation to a large company out here, and I got a call on my bag phone in my Jetta. I know I'm dating myself now, Sammy, but it was a gentleman who I think everyone knows, Chuck Robbins, who's the CEO of Cisco, along with Greg Feldman, and they called me in to interview and to meet them to come to Cisco. So most of the jobs I've always moved to or moved from are all by word of mouth or referral. Is kind of how my career has went. And so that's how I got to Cisco. It wasn't by applying directly. It was more from people talking to our partners and customers. And my name kept popping up, and Greg gave me a call, and he and Chuck interviewed me, and they brought me to Cisco.
Wow. That, yeah, just casual, just a casual Chuck Robbins drop. I love that. What a fun story.
Mhm.
I want to ask this, right off the bat. You just mentioned a lot of your career has been word of mouth, right? People hearing your name and jumping from role to role. I think for our listeners, that's something interesting and really important. Like, how did you build that brand? I mean, what's involved in making sure that your footprint is known and that people know who you are and people know the work you're doing? Like, how do you cultivate that sort of brand, I guess?
I think it goes back to two things. One, with my mantra that you talked about at the top of the podcast, was around, I'm just obsessed with doing the right thing for our customers and our partners. And I think that's where my brand has always been built on, trying to make sure that our customers and partners are successful in what they want to do and what they want to bring to market and for their employees or for their peers and so forth. So I think a part of that is that, right? Just always trying to do the right thing. And I know that may sound a little corny to some people, but I think people, even when you have to deliver hard messages or that you can't do something, if you're honest with them and upfront and they know that you are a part of their mission and what they're trying to achieve, it just creates this next level of trust. And that's kind of been the foundation of what I've always thought about the whole time I've been in sales, whether I've been at Cisco or prior to Cisco. And then, secondarily, I'm somebody who always looks at what we're doing and trying to figure out what's next. What can we do next? What are we seeing in the market? What am I reading that I think we could implement that looks like the next wave or the next gen of either employee satisfaction, or how can we be more productive, or what can we do differently? So I definitely have a keen interest in learning, whether that be through magazines or just talking to my peers and so forth. And I also have made it a mission to reach out to others and just get to know people in other groups of the business, so I understand the bigger corporate message versus just what I'm doing at the time. And I think those three things, the passion for customer success, the looking at what can we do different, how we can transform, and then the willingness to reach out to folks who I may not seem to have a common link with, but building those links, have been my three secrets to moving about in the business and having the career I've had.
Yeah. Wow. It was super impactful. And I think that last one, reaching out to other people in the business who you might not have a common link with, like right off the bat, but building those relationships, understanding the function of those departments. I mean, it's just invaluable because you're expanding your network, right? And it's like, hey, we might cross paths again one day. And really getting to know people, I think that's huge, the secret sauce right there. So let me ask, you built this amazing career at Cisco, right? You've had all these different roles. You eventually came over to Meraki to lead this global channel organization about a year ago. What was appealing to you about Cisco Meraki? Like, what was the draw of this role?
Really, it's three things for me. As you can tell, I do a lot of things in threes, 3 kids, 3 dogs, 3 disciplines. But one husband, I want to be clear with that, Sammy, one husband.
Oh my gosh.
For me, it was one, the technology and what Meraki has done up till now, and then what we're going to do around IoT and the next gen of what business applications will be. So that was number one. number two, the people I'd met through Meraki. I love the energy of the company. I love the can-do spirit. I love the let's think outside the box, which always appeals to me from a transformational standpoint. And then the third thing was, I also manage the global ecosystem and global service provider teams under my role. And it was that whole thing around how do we expand what we're doing and how do we bring managed services and lead that, right? And Meraki, for me, just the energy around those three things, the people, the technology, and the next wave of technology, and then how we go to market around managed and around ecosystem partners were the things that really brought me here. And I was right. There's so much to be done here, and there's so much energy, and just the vibe is really, really positive.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. I know. I feel like we're, to your point, at such a unique part of the transformation and the where we're going, I guess, on our roadmap as a company. And there's so many positive changes, and cloud monitoring just launched, right, where you can look at your catalyst switches under the Meraki dashboard, and there's just so much cool innovation happening. And I feel like we're right at kind of the very beginning.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So you mentioned you love coming in and transforming businesses, right? And it sounds like that's probably one of your superpowers in terms of, what you're really good at in your skill set. How did you develop that? Like, where did that come from? How did you suss it out? How did you realize that was something you were really good at doing? And then how do you come into an organization and apply that skill set to like a larger scale?
Yeah, it's interesting, now that I have, children and I see their personalities develop. I think for me, growing up, my family didn't have a ton of money. So I always had to think about how was I going to get there, or how was I going to achieve something, right? So I would always be super creative and trying to pull things together, whether it be like a prom dress or like a party I wanted to have or something along those lines. So I've always been really good at being imaginative and thinking bigger and trying to figure out what pieces I could bring together to accomplish something. I've always been somebody who has been able to do that. My friends want me to quit technology, quite honestly, and be a party planner full time, but who knows, maybe that'll happen after retirement. But so I definitely had the natural knack for it. The thing that I learned, and I didn't learn this very early in my career, I would say probably after my first leadership job. I think a lot of managers have this realization, is that you have to also have the ability to bring people along with you. It's never about the technology or about the change or about the process change. It's about the people when you think of transformation. So it's building that bridge and empowering people and making sure everyone has a say in what we're doing, and they understand not only what it means to the company, but what it means to them individually, is really the secret to transformation. Because as we all know, transformation is another word for change, right? Change for the better is what transformation is. And when anyone hears the word change, people get nervous, especially salespeople, when it comes to comp plans and salaries and bonuses and so forth. So it's being able to deliver that message simply on all levels of what does this mean in the big picture? What does this mean to our organization? Then individually, what does it mean to you? And how can you be a participant in it is probably the biggest key to transformation that I learned after my first leadership job at Cisco. Because when I came to Cisco, it was very much a go alone environment. And then I learned the hard way through some failures and some things that my team and definitely I could have done better, that, we win together, we lose together, we transform together, and it is a team sport, regardless. And that's been really my key, is making sure I'm as honest and transparent as I can be with the team, that I explain to them not just the high level, but the mid and personal levels to them. And the process and the change will happen, but you got to get the people behind you, even if they feel like the Martin Luther King Jr. quote, if they, even if we don't see the staircase, we got to take the first step, right? And it's getting them comfortable with taking that first step. I mean, and that's probably my secret sauce over the years is being able to get people to believe in the process and get behind it and to really rise up to the challenge of change. So
Right.
that's what I would
Not
say.
easy to do. Change management is difficult, no doubt. But to your point, that ability to bring people together and believe in something together, and you're so right, it is all about the people ultimately at the end of the day, because if they're not bought in, right, to the mission or the cause, you're not going to get there. So making sure you have the right people enroll and that they're bought into the larger vision and strategy is super important. You mentioned, you learned through some failures, and I always say like failure or fail is first attempt in learning, right? Is there a story that you could share with us? I mean, is there something particular at your time at Cisco that stuck out to you as like a hard learning lesson that you went through that you've, can look back on and say, I had tremendous growth at that time?
Oh my gosh, Sammy, when you're a transformational leader, and me in general, I've made so many mistakes.
Yeah.
Like so many things that I thought were great that I probably did wrong, right?
Yeah.
And I look back and I always, Monday quarterback them, right? But I think the biggest thing is I came up with this whole idea on how we should be structured when I had a team, and I went and I thought, this is the best way, and like this is why, because the numbers are saying, this will help our productivity per head, this will help our touch of the customer, this will help our touch of the partner, and this will help, achieve X amount of growth, right? So I had this plan and I was like, this is ingenious. I pulled all these numbers, the trending numbers and so forth. But the thing about Cisco that is even more so now than 15 years ago, probably when this happened, is we're such a cross-functional matrix organization that I didn't take into account how this plan and how the structure could impact other organizations. And so when I brought it to bear to present, needless to say, some of my colleagues and peers and other folks across the business were not pleased that that was the first time they were seeing it. So now, that was a huge lesson, because I'm always my old teams used to call me Mama Bear. I'm so protective of my organization and I'm so emotionally attached, but having to look across and recognize that, one change, and especially in the areas that I've worked in, will change how other people may work or field their teams. Was a huge learning lesson, and it created a lot of angst with my peers. And again, this was probably 15 plus years ago, and it's something to this day. Some of those people and I are the closest, because afterwards I fell on my sword. I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think of this. It's my fault. And I think that's a big lesson as a leader, not to be defensive, just to be like, I blew it. Sorry, guys.
Right.
Didn't know how, I didn't mean to. And so now, like, if I come up with a plan, I will socialize it with our, BD teams, with our field teams, and like APO, with our service provider teams. Like, as I'm looking at FY23, I'll talk to my team, I'll talk to the direct team, I'll talk to the marketing team, right? So everyone has a say in it, even beyond my team, and that it's really truly something that everyone can either voice their concern around or voice their support of, and we can make the plan even stronger. But that was, a huge lesson for me. And I think it's a huge lesson for a lot of leaders now, as we look across businesses, whether it's retail, manufacturing, technology companies or whatever. We live in such a matrix environment and such a hybrid work environment that people maybe not right in front of you or in a different department definitely have a say or should have some input. And we as conscious leaders need to make sure that we bring them into the process early and often as we're looking at transformation. So yes, I fell on my sword, and my plan was not implemented because it would have been a lot of change for everyone else. So we went with a hybrid plan, which quite honestly, Sammy, was a better plan anyway. So
Yeah.
it was a hard lesson, but it also helped me build some amazing relationships with those folks afterwards, once they got through the disappointment in me, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think something you said that really stuck with me is, as a leader, owning it, Right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, you're right, guys, made a mistake. That wasn't great. I learned from it. That in itself builds so much trust and credibility when a leader can own it, right?
Yeah.
Instead of pointing the finger or, I think that's hugely powerful. Right now in our business, it's an interesting time, right? For any company. I mean, there's the Great Recession and people leaving and transitioning and new roles and there's just a lot of change. And like you mentioned before, it can be uncomfortable for people. If you had advice to give, let's say someone is looking at something their leader is doing, or they feel like there's a miss somewhere, or something could be done better, and they feel maybe intimidated to come to their leader, or they don't know how to phrase it or say it. What advice do you have for listeners to kind of be that mirror, right, for their boss or maybe their boss's boss to really reflect what's going on in the business? I mean, how do you approach your boss in a way where it feels safe to bring that kind of feedback?
Yeah, and that's a great call out, Sammy, because a lot of leaders, you know, it's they don't want to know, right? Or they're so caught up in the daily, weekly, quarterly commits, right? That if you're a sales leader, that it's hard to stop and really look at something. But I think, like, I always say to my team, like, you guys can come to me with anything that's going on, because I want to do better. I want to do better for the team. I want us to do better, as an organization and as a company. That I think if you're going to come with something, just say, these are my observations, and then make them fact-based. That's number one. Make sure you don't get your emotions caught up into it, and make them fact-based. And then two, say, have we thought about doing it X, you know what I mean, versus X versus Y. And here's the outcome I believe we'll see. And again, fact-based. I think a lot of people come to, especially with change, with emotion, and there is some gut to change, right? That, you have to, like, trust your gut, trust your instincts. They just said that in Maverick that I just watched. Like, no, don't overthink it, trust your instincts, right?
Yep.
But I think if you're going to come to your leader, it has to be very fact-based. If you have something you think they can do better, because a lot of times what you'll find too, if you go to a leader with a fact-based plan, like, hey, I see this happening, and here's the result of what's happening in the business. Here's the result of, how people are feeling and so forth. And here's what I think can make it better. Most leaders will be receptive of that, because again, they're so caught up in the daily grind of everything going on around them, that if someone brings them a solution to a problem and can base it in something non-emotional, leaders are really receptive to that. I mean, I've had people in this team who have been at Meraki years who have come to me and said, hey, Hope, that's not working, and here's why. I would suggest XYZ. And I'm like, thank you so much, because I didn't know. The worst thing is not to say anything and let it fester, because then it gets into the sales. You know what I mean? It gets into the culture, and
Totally. Yep.
that's the worst thing. But again, take the emotion out of it. Make it, you can have some hypothetical cases around it, but make sure you have some facts and what you think it will deliver. That would be my advice.
I think that's great advice. And to your point too, not only make it fact-based, but play out the outcomes. Like, hey, looked at the data, here's the solution, right? This could be it. It could be X, Y, or Z. Like, I love coming to the table with a solution, right? If you're going to, share some feedback or bring up things that could be better, well, then what do you have, right? Share with me what could be better. So I love that. Thank you for sharing that call out. As we talk about your evolution and the changes you've seen in the business, I mean, where did you find your confidence? Where did you find the belief in you as a female leader at this company, right? I'm sure when you started at Cisco over 22 years ago, it was a lot different. We're seeing a lot more women in leadership positions now, but where did that come from? Talk to us about your evolution as a leader.
So I was raised by a baseball coach, right? Was my and both of my dad was a baseball coach, and both of my grandmothers were the money winners in their family, right? The breadwinners in their family. my grandmother Margaret and grandmother Mabel for a number of years were, think back to, and this is kind of funny to say, like the Mad Men era, like my grandmother's like a lead, executive secretary for a big corporation. My other grandmother ran a shoe store that had multiple locations and so forth. So I grew up just organically seeing women in leadership positions, or seeing my dad coach, because he coached, my brother and I's team, but then he coached other teams like my entire life, right? So organically, I saw that in motion in my family. And for my grandmothers to be working in the workforce back then, it wasn't a foreign thing to me, Sammy. It was just a normal thing. And then when my mom and my brother and I went to school, my mom went to work, right? So I grew up in a family where that wasn't a novelty, right? That was just how it was. So I organically through that, my grandparents owned also an auctioneering business. So being a small business owner, so I started working in that when I was young, like tallying bid sheets and things and taking money and, like collecting from people and making sure they got their merchandise and so forth at a young age. So I organically had seen that growing up. What took me a while to get to is probably a more polished approach. Because I grew up in, the Midwest in a small town, and the more diplomatic approach to leadership probably took me longer because I was probably a little too forthright in my opinions, right? So I've had to peel that back. But I will say this, when I got to Cisco, and it was, again, there weren't a lot of women when I got here, I've never felt marginalized here. I've always been able to speak my mind, and people have respected it. But I do think it's because I've had that confidence that I've had since I was little, just because I saw that with my grandmothers, right? In particular, and with my father. So I think that has definitely helped me be able to understand how to position things and speak my mind. Now, again, I've had to level things back, because there was a time when, anyone who knows me who would be listening to this is laughing, where I may have went a little too much digging in, right? That there's a balance to it. And but I think overall, I've had some great mentors in the business who are women who are ahead of me, or women who were in different businesses who kind of took me under their wing. And that's why I also feel an obligation to give back to the women around me, or the individuals who may not be the majority of our business or workforce, so that I can make sure that they're, in a position to succeed, right? Because I have had that. I have been fortunate enough to have strong women leaders and strong men leaders around me to help me with my skill sets, right? And help me get to the right places. So
Yep. I 100% hear you though on the polish and the finesse and the effectiveness of your message. I've gotten that feedback before personally in my leadership career. Like, hey, you're a force to be reckoned with, but there's a way to use, your emotions, right? And there's a time for it, and there's a time to scale back. And it's been a hard lesson, right? And I'm super grateful I got the feedback early in my career, but it's always something I have to be mindful of. So like before responding to
you hit
emails.
the nail on the head right there, Sandy, is there's so many people who don't get that feedback. And I feel so fortunate because I do have a lot of energy and a lot of passion, and I want to do the right things, right? But there is a balance, and I was lucky enough, like you, to have that earlier in my career than later. But, I meet people every day that people have not had honest coaching conversations with. And it's unfortunate because it's hurt the person's career. And then there's a lot of work to be done to reset, if that makes sense.
Yep, absolutely. I always say clear is kind, right? Brene Brown, like you got to be upfront with people, and you can do it with compassion and kindness and deliver that message, but you're not doing anyone on your team favors if you see something, with their performance that they could get better at, right? And they could become really strong. If you're not sharing it with them just because it makes you feel uncomfortable, you're not doing your job as a leader, right? If you're not developing your people. I I want to talk about building teams and building diverse teams. I know this is super important to you. And I want to ask, what does it mean to you to build out diverse teams? And how do you go about not only recruiting and hiring diverse talent, but once you've cultivated these diverse teams, whether it's race, gender, ethnicity, thought diversity, right, cognitive diversity, how do you make the folks on your team feel that sense of belonging?
Yeah. Diversity is such a hot topic, right, in today's environment, right, work environment. People talk about it quite a bit. I feel so fortunate to live in an area, I think, where you live, where there is a lot of diversity. My kids are growing up with a lot of diversity, with, whether it be race, religion, age, whatever, sexual orientation and so forth. And that's their normal, right? And I think, with my last team before I came to Meraki, it was a team that I had the oldest employee at Cisco on my team, and I had folks who were in their 20s. I had folks who were, of different ethnic backgrounds and so forth, and who were set in their ways, because there were people on my old team who had been in the same job for 25 years, the same job,
Right.
not the same company, the same job.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, working through that transformation, and I think the thing that people forget when they're trying to build diverse teams, if people feel they're heard and people feel they have a platform to speak out on, and they feel they're respected, it doesn't matter a person's, background or who they are, right? People in general come from a place of, people want to be respected. They want to feel that they have a sense of, safety, right, in the workplace. They want to feel like they have a platform to be able to voice their opinions, whether they agree or disagree. And, and that's the culture I try and build, right? I recruit quite a bit. I'm involved in a lot of initiatives at Cisco and Meraki, whether it be, women of Cisco, women of Meraki. I'm a part of the proximity initiative at Cisco that came out after the George Floyd shooting, that brought African American males and some females who may not have felt like they had a platform to speak up on, right? And that we were paired together, who quite honestly have become extremely close to me. And, it's because, well, one of them said I reminded him of his mother. So I don't know, maybe he shouldn't be that close. I'm just kidding. But we've built this like friendship, and it's all built on those things that people innately as humans want to have, and they want to be able to be seen. They want to be able to be celebrated for who they are, and they want to have a safe place. And so, I recruit from historically Black colleges. I'm a part of listening in and attending events around the LGBTQ community that we have here at Cisco. I've attended some of the events of Asian Americans that we have. So Sammy, I just lean into all these different groups. And so one, I can hear their concerns or what they worry about or what they're thinking. As a leader, I think I need to understand that. And then how do I help them get to their next level? How do I help them get to, where they want to be and who they want to be, right? Within the business community. So I spend a lot of time doing that. One is because I believe diverse teams make the best teams, but two, it's also there's something powerful about when you can help another individual and see them grow. It's kind of like parenting. It's like this very special, I don't know how to explain it, experience, right? So
Yeah.
I make an effort to get out to as many different events and many different organizations as I can. I speak to different events. I'm involved now with partners who are owned by African Americans. Like, how do we get them, a bigger part of our partner, community, and how do we help support them? And so I think it's just important to look at people and provide them safety and provide them a platform and provide them an opportunity, regardless of how they may identify, because it just makes it a better workplace. And people learn from people. I mean, on my last team, I had a gentleman who left and he wrote me a letter and he said, I've never worked for such a diverse team and I've never been in a happier place. I'm so glad I got to retire here. Like this was his, he was retiring. And it just made me feel so good that, he noticed it, right? And he saw what it brought to him and it allowed him to retire in a certain place or a certain mindset that he may not have been able to before. So that was pretty powerful for me to get that affirmation from him.
Right. That's so special. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you said it really comes down to people feeling seen and heard. Regardless of how they identify, their backgrounds, where they've come from. If you can create a team where you've cultivated the relationships, right? And I feel inspired, by the way, after listening to you, to join a lot more employee resource groups, right? And really get out there more myself. But if you can build the relationships with these folks and create a diverse team, and then they come to your team and you create an environment of psychological safety where people feel like they can show up as who they are and they can speak their mind and they can share their ideas without fear of, retaliation, that just breeds a healthy work environment where people are going to feel excited to show up and do their job, which in turn presents better results, right? So it's a win-win for the business to create that kind of team in that environment, which it sounds like you're pretty masterful at. It's a big deal.
I don't know if anyone's masterful in anything. I always say, Michael Phelps had a coach for a reason, right? Like I still have a lot of coaches who are helping behind the scenes and, that I call upon, but it's definitely something I try to do my due diligence around and get as much, just as much diversity and just as much knowledge around where people are and how they're feeling is really important to me.
Yeah. That's very evident. So thank you for sharing that. We haven't spent too much time talking about your actual role, right? And what you do, kind of like the nitty gritty, leading the global channel organization. And this is like a big kind of question, I guess, but where do you see, the channel organization moving, at Cisco Meraki? I think at Cisco, they have a very baked out channel practice, right? And we're taking a lot of those partners who have been Cisco resellers for years and years and introducing them to Meraki and getting them hooked on cloud. Where do you see the evolution going? Kind of where is your mindset with where you want to take our channel organization in this next fiscal year?
Yeah, I mean, I have 4 priorities for next year that I'm concentrating on with the team. And, I've been open with my team about this for some months. One is around managed and what does managed look like for Meraki, right? So managed could be managed by service providers, could be managed by traditional partners. What sort of managed cloud platform offers do we have, right? And how do we get them out and get them to the right partners is number one. Number 2 is around IoT. I really think IoT is the unicorn inside of Meraki, kind of who Meraki was 10 years ago. And I think we have a huge upside there. So how do we get to the right IoT partners or IoT distributors to make sure we get that message out? So that's number 2. Number 3 is around, routes to market from a segmentation standpoint. So SMB was the bread and butter for Meraki. It's still a big part of our business. How do we help accelerate that? And how do we do that with our partners, not just for us, but for the overall Cisco, train per se? And then finally, ecosystem. I mean, the great thing about Meraki that makes it so unique from a lot of parts of Cisco, not all, but some parts of Cisco is, first off, the app developers and those who can build on top of our technology and what we can bring to verticalized markets, what we can bring to needs around COVID or around employee safety and just that I feel as if we're just starting that, even though we have so many partners on our marketplace. I think that's really going to be the secret sauce as we move forward, is getting into those ecosystem partners who can build on top of the platform of Meraki, working with maybe some traditional partners or partners who we haven't even met yet to really meet those needs, whether it be around, safety of a community or retail, how many times did Sammy come in and look at that red dress, stuff like that, and really helping with, I think people don't understand that Cisco Meraki is a big data company and an analytics company. I think we lose ourselves on being called the cloud company, but really through IoT and sensors and other things, it really helps us build this huge data collection that then we can use analytics to provide some pretty powerful results. And that's really where I see the team going over the next year or two.
Yeah, that's awesome. Sounds like you got your work cut out for you. You got a lot on the agenda, but we can do it as a team. There's no doubt. And I completely agree with you. I think IoT and ecosystem are two things that are absolute differentiators, especially with our competitors. And you touched on all the analytics, right? All the rich analytics that you can kind of get out of the Meraki platform too. So the future is definitely bright. That's for sure. So we're going to end now. Hope, it's been so amazing chatting with you. I want to talk about some sort of call to action. So, if folks that are listening today are feeling inspired, want to do, more research on getting more involved, I guess, with channel partners, service provider, what do you recommend? How could someone get involved, get more information, where to go if you've sparked some interest, maybe wants to work for you, who knows?
Well, I like all of those, actually. I think that the biggest thing is they should subscribe, obviously, to Meraki on LinkedIn. I think we do a great job of getting out information, right? They could also go to my page, my LinkedIn page, if they'd like to reach out to me directly. And then finally, if they want to get involved or they're curious about getting involved, as a partner or an ecosystem partner, they can either go to the Meraki partner site, or again, I'm pretty involved in everything. So they could also reach out to me directly on LinkedIn and I could get them connected with the right teams. So
beautiful. Beautiful. I love it. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I hope you had fun. You better come back.
I did. I'm excited to be here. It was a good way to come back to work, Sammy. So I appreciate you having me on the call, and I appreciate you doing this, for the organization and so forth. And
oh my gosh,
don't worry, I'll see you soon in the Bay. I'll come back out and visit.
Good. You better. I would love that. Your visit was so fun. And thank you again. You're an inspiring leader. Again, we connected right away and I could just tell your energy, your vibe, the way you think about business and transformation, so impactful. You had so many gold nuggets throughout our conversation today. So I hope our listeners are really walking away with something helpful that they can apply to their day-to-day, whether they're at Cisco Meraki or at Cisco or at a different organization. There was a lot to take from this call today. So thank you, Hope. We are signing off. Thanks for tuning in another great episode of the Meraki Unboxed podcast. We will see you back here in 2 weeks.